Good evening, everyone. This is Richard Avery, and I would like to welcome you to our Session 2 presentation of a video production where my son, Nathan Avery, is going to ask me 3 questions. And I know 1 or 2 of them are going to be very challenging. So, let's get right at it. And Nathan, you may go ahead and ask your questions.
With pleasure. Okay. My first question is basically this. Out of all the Star Trek movies, new or old, which one do you like the most? The second question, during your time in the military, who was the president then? And the third and final question is going to be a little bit lengthy. Sean Connery was well known for as James Bond during his early years, but during his movie career, his choices were mixed, hit and miss. But this one movie, he quit acting as of now. What was that movie? Choose your question wisely.
Thank you, Nathan. The questions that my son asked, I knew there was going to be a challenging one in there. And although I'm a fan of Sean Connery and his James Bond genre of movies, I'm going to answer the question about who was president during the years that I was in the military. I was in the military for almost 17 years, so there were several presidents. There was Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, and as a matter of fact, with Jimmy Carter, that is when the United States military received its biggest pay raise ever of 11%. But there's one particular president, Nathan, that I want to talk about, and that president is Richard Milhous Nixon. Now, there's 3 things I want to let you know about Nixon that bear relevance to what we're talking about tonight. First of all, Richard Nixon was a president that was a force within himself. He had political will. He had political acumen. Now you say to yourself, well, don't all presidents have that? They do. But in Richard Nixon's case, some of the insiders or some of the staff members that worked with him in the White House said that he was like a modern Attila the Hun. He didn't just rule the White House. He, at times, it was said he laid siege to the White House with his strength of will and character. But there's some things about Nixon that were not very savory. Nixon used profanity. And you say, well, gee, that's nothing new. Everyone uses profanity. Well, no, everyone doesn't, especially Christians. Profanity, as defined, is the feeble mind's effort to express itself when the mouth has nothing intelligent to give the brain to think about so that the mouth can speak. Please do not ask me to repeat that. Nixon was famous, Nathan, because he did something that other presidents had not done at that time. He visited Red China. Now, Red China is a communist nation, and Mao Zedong was the leader of Red China. And what was significant about his visit was not only was he the first president to actually go and open up a dialogue, but because it was so unsuspected that whenever someone does something that is not according to conventional wisdom or unsuspected, they use the phrase, only Nixon can go to China. And he went and opened up a dialogue. Number 2, Nixon was our commander-in-chief during the Vietnam War. And many people hold him accountable for some of his actions and inactions. When it was possible to win the war, Richard Nixon, President Nixon, he didn't go follow through completely with what was available to him by the councils of his military commanders. The third thing that Richard Nixon did that is significant and probably the death blow to how historians will always view him, he was involved, of course, in the Watergate scandal. And very briefly, the Watergate scandal involved a break-in into one of the offices held by the opposing political party. And this break-in revealed that items were taken to sort of undermine or usurp the role of the other political party. And Nixon, although he was not the one that physically broke into the office, he authorized it, which means he was responsible. And Nathan, what happened though, there were audio tapes made of him having discussions with the people that were responsible for this break-in. And once he found out that he had to release these audio tapes, mysteriously 18 minutes of significant evidence disappeared from the tapes. And of course, he did not know, Richard Nixon did not know, or he claimed to not know what happened to the 18 minutes. And another thing he did during Watergate, he tried to obstruct justice. They called it a Saturday night massacre. And basically what the president did, what President Nixon did, was he fired all the prosecutors. Because as president, prosecutors are not hired, they're appointed by the president. And by being appointed, they're appointed at his pleasure, which means it's almost like having a job called employment at will, where you can work, but if the supervisor or the boss says, you know what, we don't want you anymore, then you lose your job. It doesn't have to be because you did anything wrong or acted in any type of ill manner. It's called employment at will. And Nixon, what he did, he fired all the prosecutors so no one could prosecute him. But as it turned out, justice prevailed, and President Nixon finally resigned his office as president. To summarize it again, the president I spoke about, President Nixon, he was responsible for the Watergate scandal. Number 2, he was the first president to visit Red China. And number 3, he was our commander-in-chief during the Vietnam War. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your comments and your constructive criticism. Have a blessed day.
See y'all.